Hey everybody, welcome back to Garage Band Guitarist, and this lesson is the third one on the 7th chords, okay? And we have covered so far two kinds of 7th chords, the dominant 7th chord, which is just indicated with the 7, the major 7th chord, and now we're going to do what's called the minor 7th chord, okay? That's what this lesson is all about. And the notation for the minor 7th chord you'll see usually it'll just say lowercase m and a 7. So like a E minor 7 would be a capital E and a small m and then a 7. But occasionally they write it with a min 7 instead. And those are the same thing. So just so you don't get confused when you see that, if you see a E min 7, it's the same thing as a EM7, okay? Same thing, okay? All right, but those are the kind of chords we're going to talk about in this lesson. Again, there's a printable chord chart in the description, and you may want to print that out before you start this lesson. It might help guide you along. Of course, I'll flash them on the screen like I always do, but sometimes it's easier if you have it printed out in front of you. So download that PDF and print that sucker out. Okay, all right. The minor 7th chord. How is this one different than the other 7th chords that we've talked about so far? Well, it's confusing because the minor 7th interval, we talked about the intervals, is different than the minor 7th chord. Okay, there's not a direct correspondence there between between those two things. And add to that the minor 7th interval is used in the minor 7th chord. Now you might expect that, but that's not why it's called the minor 7th chord, okay? And so it can get a little confusing. And there's got to be more to it than just having the minor 7th interval in the chord, because then it would just be a dominant 7th chord. That's what we did with the dominant 7th chord, right? We had the major triad 1, 3, 5, and then we added the minor 7th interval to the top of that to get our 4th note, and that gave us the dominant 7th. That's all we did was add that note. So there's got to be more than that to make something a minor 7th chord. What is it? What is the minor 7th chord? Well, it's the combination of the minor chord and the 7th chord, and the dominant 7th chord. You put those together, and that's how you get the minor 7th chord, okay? So we're the minor in that one is referring to the 3rd, just like it is in a minor chord. It's referring to the 3rd, and the 7 is referring to that dominant 7th, that minor 7th interval, okay? So we're going to change the 3rd from the major 3rd to the minor 3rd, and then we're going to add the minor 7th, the dominant 7th, into the chord. That's going to be our 4 notes for the minor 7th chord, okay? But I think the easiest way to think about it is you're taking the minor chord and the 7th chord and you're putting them together, okay? And you're going to see that when we play them on the guitar, because that's exactly how you should think about getting to the minor 7th chord, is combining your minor chord that you're playing with your 7th chord, putting them together, and that's going to give you the minor 7th chord, okay? So let's go back really quick though, and just look at our chart again, just to make this perfectly clear. This is C, but you can set these up as we have been for any key, but let's just do it in C, and you'll see what's in the minor 7th chord. So first of all, we have the root note, the C, okay, the C down here, and then we'll have the minor 3rd, right? Because we don't want that major 3rd, that E. We want the one that's a half step lower. That's what makes it minor. That's what makes it a minor chord. And so that's D sharp or E flat. We've been calling it either one as we go along. It's the same thing, right? So that's the 2nd note. So we've got a 1 and a minor 3rd. And then we've got our 5th, our G, okay? We always get that G in there, that 5th, okay? And then we have the minor 7th, which is not the major 7th that's in the scale, the B note, it's the minor 7th, the A sharp or B flat, okay? And remember, A sharp and B flat are the same thing. And so those are the 4 notes in the C minor 7th chord, right? And you can see that you've got the minor chord, and then you've got the 7th chord, 7th interval in the chord, right? And so you put those together, and that's the minor 7th chord, okay? All right, that's it. That's the concept, okay? It's not terribly difficult, but there it is. And it's a little confusing just because of the way it's named, okay? But there it is, okay? All right, let's make them on the guitar, and that makes it all the more clear. This is not a very difficult thing to do. It's fairly easy. We just take these forms we already know, and we put them together, and we get the new chord, okay? So let's start with E minor 7th, okay? Recall our E minor chord, okay? And how we got there, recall, is that we're getting a G in there. In an E major chord, there's a G sharp. That's the 3rd, but we're dropping it down a half step and getting a G. And that's our E minor form, okay? So E minor. And then, remember, we also had an E7 chord, an E7, and that was like this, right? And the way we got there was we were playing an E on that D string on the 2nd fret in the E major chord, and we just opened it up to a D to get that D. Okay, so now we've got that 7th in the chord, okay? So now what we need to do is just put those together. All right, that's easy enough to do. We just open up both of those strings, right? And so we have both the G string getting the minor 3rd, and we've got the D string open getting that 7th, okay? And so all we've got now for the E minor 7th chord, now we put those two together, we're just fretting one note. We're fretting the B on the A string on the 2nd fret, okay? Play that with any finger you want, okay? A lot of people joke about this being the simplest chord on the guitar because you just press down that one thing and strum all the strings. And that's an E minor 7th chord. Okay. Can be even simpler if you want. I mean, just don't play the lowest strings, the 2 lowest strings, or mute them, and play the last 4 strings. And those are the notes that you need for an E minor 7th chord, because you've got a D in there, that's your 7. You've got a G in there, that's your minor 3rd. You've got a B, your 5th, and then you've got an E, your root note, E. So you've got all 4 notes you need, those last 4 strings. So you can have a very, very simple chord. You don't have to fret anything at all. Just play the last 4 strings. Hey, E minor 7th, okay. All right, so that's a very easy chord to play. All right? But you see how we did it was by putting that E minor and the E7 together. Okay. Let's do it on A minor 7th, okay? Again, very simple to do. Just remember, you got your A minor right here. By getting this C note in an A major, you've got a C sharp on the B string, but you drop it down to a C in the A minor. That's our A minor chord. And then we had our A7 chord, which looked like this, right? And we're getting that 7 with that open G string. A G is the note we need to get that dominant 7th chord. And so now we just got to put them together. So if we've got the 7 here, and we just need to get the minor 3rd over here. And so that's the A minor 7th chord right there, all right? That's it. Simple, all right? Just putting those 2 chords together, and you've got the minor 7th chord, all right? Now, time for a little test. We'll have a little quiz, all right? Let's try it with D minor 7th. I want you to try to make a D minor 7th. You know your D minor chord, you know your D7 chord. Stop the video, pause, and see if you can figure out how to put together the D minor 7th chord, okay? Go. Okay, we're back. Did you do it? Were you able to figure out the D minor 7th chord? Well, let's check and see. Let's make sure you got it right, okay? Recall our D minor chord looks like this, right? And the note we need to make it minor is that F up there on the E string, right? That's the note we need. And then for a D7, we had that little upside down triangle, like that, right? And that gave us the C here on the B string, which is the note we needed. So now to put those together, there's my C and there's my F, and then I still got what's left of the chord down here, and so it looks like this. Did you get it? Did you figure it out? Right? And that's how you always do it when you're trying to figure out that chord. You get the minor version, get the 7th version, and you put them together. Okay, very easy. Alrighty, so those are 3 of the minor 7th chords, the ones you use most often, I would say. E minor 7, A minor 7. That comes up an awful lot because it's very closely related to the C chord. If you just put your ring finger back down on the C note on the A string, you've got a C chord. You lift it up and let the A ring, and instead you've got an A minor 7 chord. Very closely related to each other. And then the D minor 7. Those are the 3 that you use most often, okay? But there's other ones and you'll run into them, all right? So how do you get the rest of them? And the answer is you get them with bar chords, okay? And this is really, really easy to do, especially when you're using the E form bar chord, because the E form of the E minor 7th was just that one note you were pushing down, right? So when you have your bar, you just need to push that one note down right there, right? And then you can play a minor 7 chord anywhere you want by just pushing that one string down. And I would suggest putting it down with your ring finger. You can do it with your index or your middle finger if you want, but ring finger is the easiest way to do it. So here on the 3rd fret, for example, is a G minor 7 chord, right? And it's just the same thing we were playing down here, except we've got our bar and we've gone up 3 frets. So our bar's on the 3rd fret and our ring finger is on the A string on the 5th fret. And that's it, G minor 7 chord. And like I said, you can slide that around anywhere you want. Get a C minor 7th or whatever it is that you're after, A minor 7th. Same way to play this chord down here. Same chord, different way to play it, I mean. Okay, so but you can slide that around just like you do all your bar chords, okay? You can also use the A form, so our A minor 7th. Okay, we had those 2 notes, and so we're gonna use that and use our index finger, but we'll have to switch and use our 2nd and 3rd fingers to get those notes, so we have our index finger left over for the bar. But same thing, we can just slide that around wherever we want. Let's go up here on the 2nd fret. That's a B minor 7th chord. And it's the same thing as the A one, we've just moved it up 2 frets and use our bar on the 2nd fret. That's it. And you could slide that around. Okay. And so with those 2 bar chords and those open forms, you can basically get any minor 7th chord that you want. Okay. All right. When it comes to chords, I just wanted to point out that I'm showing you one way or sometimes 2 ways to play the chord, but there's lots of ways of playing these chords. And I don't want you to be deceived into thinking that there's one way and it's the right way. And no, anytime you can get all the notes that are in the chord being played, you've got the chord. All right, so you don't have to think that there's a wrong way or a one way to do it. And I wanted to demonstrate this a little bit with the E minor 7th chord because there's a lot of easy ways to play that chord. All right, and so this is the way we just learned. Just pushing down this 1 fret, okay, on the B string. I'm sorry, on the A string. I'm playing a B note on the A string. Okay, but the notes we needed to add in and we need to make sure are in the chord, besides the B, the 5th, were the G for the minor 3rd and the D for the 7th. So anytime we can get those notes, even if it's a different way, will have the chord. So, for example, you're trying to get the 7th, there's other ways to get a D. We're getting it here with this open D string, but you can also get it up here on your B string on the 3rd fret. That's a D as well. And so if you want that note to come out stronger, you can repeat it by hitting that D up there. It just makes that aspect of the chord come out more and be stronger. You can also get a G for the minor. You can get that up here on the top, on the E string, on the high E string, on the 3rd fret. You can get an E. So that's also an E minor 7th chord. Or you can use both of them up there to make those parts of the chord come out more. Or you can play the regular E minor, but then get the D up here. Instead of getting it down here, just get it on the high spot on the B string, on the 3rd fret. Okay? And so what I drew in this little chord diagram here is just some options. Those orange dots are options where you could also play some of the notes in the E minor 7th chord. And you can do any combination of those and still get an E minor 7th chord. And there's others beyond those, okay? But just an example of different ways of doing that. And the reason to do that is just to make the chord sound a little different, or to make parts of it more apparent, or reinforcing of something else that's being played by other players or something like that, or filling in where they're not playing that chord as loud, or that note as loud, or something with the melody. I mean, there's just lots of different ways to do things to give you different kinds of sounds. And that's all I wanted to say about that. Okay. Last thing, we're done with the 7th chords now. This is a very simple lesson, but I wanted to just kind of summarize this with a little chart that I think is handy for you to see, okay? And so what I have here is this thing laid out with sort of what kind of chord it is, okay? And then what intervals are in the chord. And then I give you 2 examples in 2 different keys, all right? So let's look at this first one here. This is just the major triad and the minor triad, what we started with at the very beginning of the course. And so in the major triad, the intervals are 1, 3, 5. Those are all in the major chord, 1, 3, 5. An example, in the key of G, those 3 notes are G, B, and D, all right? You should probably have that in your head by now. You probably do. In D, the example, it's D, F sharp, and A. Okay, those are the 3 notes in the major triad. The minor triad, it's going to look a lot like the major triad, except that middle note's going to be down a half step, right? So we have the 1st and the minor 3rd and the 5th, right? Those are the notes in that chord. So a G minor chord, we'd have G, B flat, and D instead of G, B, and D. For D minor and D, we'd have D, F, and A instead of F sharp, right? So down a half step, we've got that down a half step, right? All right, so those are the major and minor triads. You know that. All right, so the stuff we just learned, though, the 7ths, okay? So we're adding a note to the triad. And so there's going to be 4 notes in each one of these. Which one are we going to, what note are we going to add? That's what the key question is. So for the regular 7th, the dominant 7th chord, we have a 1, 3, 5, just like we did. And then we're adding the minor 7th note, okay? The minor 7th interval. And so for G, the G7 is G, B, D, and F, right? For D7, it's D, F sharp, A, and C. So we've just taken that major triad at the top, and we have added the minor 7th to those 3 notes to get the 4 notes for the chord. Then the next line is the minor 7th chord, the ones we just did in this lesson. Okay, so we'll have the minor 3rd and we'll have the minor 7th in order to get those. So you see the intervals: 1, minor 3rd, 5th, minor 7th. Those are the notes in the minor 7th chord. And so for G minor 7, it's G, B flat, D, and F. Okay. For D minor 7, it's D, F, A, and C. All right, so there you go. That's how the minor 7th is laid out. And then compare that to the last one, the major 7th, which has the original major triad, 1, 3, 5, and then we're adding the major 7th interval to that. Okay, so for G major 7, it's G, B, D, and F sharp, right? That's the note that's in the major scale for G. G, B, D, and F sharp. And then for D major 7th, it's D, F sharp, A, and C sharp. And just comparing these to each other helps you solidify in your mind how they work. So the difference between the major 7th and the dominant 7th is, for G, is there's an F versus an F sharp. Otherwise, it's the same, right? And the difference between the dominant 7th and the minor 7th is that you've got that minor third in there. So for G, it's the same, except you got a B flat instead of a B, and so on. And so that little exercise helps you reinforce this in your head. And I would suggest that maybe you do a little exercise for yourself, which is to take the other keys, an E or a C, and just map this whole thing out for yourself for each of the different keys, and it'll make it stick in your head more how these work. And that'll be very, very helpful to you as you play, as you see chords, and as you extend beyond what we're learning in these lessons right here. Okay? All right. That's it. The next lesson, of course, is my favorite, putting actual songs in front of you and helping you learn a few songs that this time use the different 7th chords, okay? So we will see you for that in the next lesson.